Despite having the quickest access to communication with today's modern technology, we as a population are the loneliest we've ever been. The internet and social media have connected the world in a new way, but is this intense engagement in the online space beneficial for our well-being? I think we all know the answer to that, but in case you needed proof, recent studies are showing that heavy social media users are experiencing more loneliness than light social media users. Now, this isn't to say that all social media users are lonely, but it does point towards the fact that maybe the internet becoming our dominant space for connection might not be the best thing for us. This rise in social media goes hand in hand with the downfall of another vital aspect of our society: third places. If you don't know what that is, I got you. Hi, my name is Maddie, and I make videos to spread the stoke of skating. So let's have a little chat about what third places are, why we all need one, yes, including you, and why skate parks are an amazing third place that you should consider trying out. So before I convince you the skate park is an amazing third place, let's talk about what third places actually are. The term first appears in a book published in 1989 called The Great Good Place by late urban sociologist Ray Oldenburg. In this book, Oldenburg refers to third places as places where people spend time outside of the first place home and the second place work. Think about these as your coffee shops, gyms, bars, and what we're going to talk about today, skate parks. He argues the importance of these spaces for a few reasons, one of which being it offers a place of convergence for all types of people. Meaning third spaces unite the community by bringing people of different backgrounds and beliefs together to hang out, socialize, and de-stress. This uniting of the community through social connection stretches beyond the individual places themselves, uniting the community as a whole. On and off again, United States Surgeon General Vivek Murthy describes the importance of this in a 2023 public advisory report, stating, "Social connection is an important social determinant of health, and more broadly, of community well-being, including but not limited to population health, community resilience when natural hazards strike, community safety, economic prosperity, and representative government." Basically, he's saying that forming connections with others affects the most important parts of a well-functioning society. So places with stronger community ties are more likely to come together in times of need or to reach common community goals. Third places are the perfect way to facilitate these community bonds because they provide space for people to gather. You can think of third places as the living room of the community, as they've been called. You've probably seen portrayals of these community living rooms in your favorite TV shows and movies without even knowing it, like Central Park Coffee Shop in Friends, McLaren's Pub and How I Met Your Mother, and even the Goo Lagoon in SpongeBob. Yes, even SpongeBob needs a third space to unwind because if you work in customer service, you know that shit is stressful.
How am I supposed to eat this pizza without my drink?
When I was a kid, we just went to the mall or we played in the creek in the neighborhood, and now malls aren't a thing anymore, and more kids than ever are sitting inside on their phones than playing outdoors. Let's face it, many of the old popular third places aren't so poppin' anymore. Instead, they've been replaced by a kind of digital third place, the ramifications of which we have barely scratched the surface of, because the first generations who've grown up with this technology are just now entering adulthood and experiencing it. Unlike a lot of children today, I didn't have a smartphone until I was a sophomore in high school, and I got to experience a lot of my younger years enjoying these third places that are fizzling out in the modern world. Sir Oldenburg was ahead of his time in the 90s when he said that third places are the heart of a community's social vitality, the grassroots of democracy, but sadly, they constitute a diminishing aspect of the American social landscape. In America specifically, we've lost access to third places through factors like convenience, capitalism, and the internet, and it is tanking our mental health. Before suburbia started taking over the world, communities were more centralized and members were intertwined in a different way than they are now. The daily pre-work stroll to the coffee shop became picking it up through the drive-thru. The weekend barbecues in the park started being hosted within the fence of a backyard, and the days of trying on clothes at the store have been replaced by online shopping. Convenience became more important than community, and money became the most important thing of all. Even if a community does have third places, a lot of them are hidden behind a paywall, meaning that certain people don't have access to them at all. Don't have extra money to spare? I guess you're not going to a coffee shop because you'll spend $8 on a latte. Can't go to the movies because they'll bleed you dry. Not working out in the gym because that membership fee is out of the question. These small changes have added up over time, creating the loneliest population to date. Now, I know you think I might be exaggerating, but the Surgeon General we mentioned earlier, his Office of Communications released a public advisory report in 2023 that shed some light on the seriousness of what they dubbed the loneliness epidemic. They shared that recent surveys have found that approximately half of US adults are reporting loneliness, with a good chunk of that being young adults. Studies around this topic indicate that loneliness loneliness and isolation are more widespread than some of our other common health issues of our day, including smoking and diabetes. People are spending less and less time with their friends, with the average amount of time decreasing from 60 minutes per day in 2003 to just 20 minutes per day 2 decades later. That is a 66% drop for the average person in daily social time, and even higher at 70% for young adults. Increased capitalistic demands are keeping us in a perpetual cycle of go to work all day, come home, feed ourselves, and then by that point we're too exhausted to do anything else except for what? Stare at our phones to get a smidge of dopamine so that we can forget how exhausted we are, fall asleep, and do it all again tomorrow. This brutal cycle is taking a toll on our mental health, physical health, societal health, and if we don't do something about it soon, it's only gonna get worse from here. For those who work from home, the reality is quite different, but it follows that same trend of the escalating isolation of the American people. Working from home means that your first place and your second place meld into one, further limiting the interaction you have with your community members and the environment around you. Don't get me wrong, working from home has many benefits, like being able to spend more time with your family or working in a space you feel comfortable in, but with more people than ever working from home, 14.7% more in the last 20 years to be exact, that's gotta have some sort of effect on our society, right? Whether you work from home or not, you need a third place to connect with others, indulge in your interests, and relieve stress. Now, before I try to convince you to make the skate park your new third place, let's talk about how third places became a third place in the first place. became a third place in the first place. Skate parks weren't the original skate scene. Street skating was. Professional skateboarder Bobby Palaio, who's been skating since the mid-80s, defines street skating as the art of interpreting objects and setups that occur in the streets and sidewalks and incorporating them into your skating. It's the appropriation and use of objects found naturally in any street or city environment. This is a fancy way to say that skaters find features out in the street and figure out creative ways to skate them. These features are things like curbs, rails, or even empty pools. This interaction with their local environment is amazing for skaters' feeling of connection to their town, as these skate spots become third places within themselves. However, this is one of the ways that skating got a bad rap, because skaters would use public space in a way deemed unacceptable by city governments. Skaters were counterculture, and that was seen as threatening to the community. So city planners and architects work together to incorporate elements into the city to prevent skaters from having access to certain spaces. In his thesis about how skateboarders use architecture, former professional skateboarder and PhD Ocean Howell describes this well. He noted that skateboarding is a thorn in the side of landscape architects, planners, and building owners, so much so that there are now design workshops that teach a series of defensive architectural tactics for deterring the activity. These defensive architectural tactics are called skate stoppers, and many city governments claim to use them to reduce skateboarding damage, such as chipping paint from grinding on rails or stained curbs from skating on wax. It could be argued, though, that skate stoppers are a form of hostile architecture. Hostile architecture is an urban design strategy in which elements are used to prevent access to certain public spaces, guiding the behavior that can occur there. For example, there's pointy metal features that keep people or animals from being able to sit in certain locations, or there's bench separators to prevent people from sleeping there. The deputy director of a company that combats hostile architecture, Brianni Henson, describes the effect of these on a community well. She says, "In many of the communities where our company works, vestiges of prior hostile design interventions leave public spaces devoid of healthy, vibrant public life." This type of architecture, including skate stoppers and all other forms, dissuade public places from becoming third places, ultimately denying the development of community culture there. And boy, did city governments want to keep skate culture away from everybody else. And this is where the skate parks come into play. These concrete jungles started popping up after the first one, Surf City in Tucson, Arizona, opened in 1965. The combination of the parks with the skate stoppers meant that skaters were being funneled to the skate parks by the local government, and this was kind of mixed messaging. On one hand, the skaters were getting a place to skate, but on the other hand, it was at the expense of them being isolated from everybody else. There's an article shared by the National Library of Medicine called Skateparks as Hybrid Elements of the City, and in this article, the the authors describe the process of getting redirected to the parks. They say that in this process, both the skate park and the city speak paradoxically of skateboard culture, as both included by the creation of the skate parks and excluded in the creation of hostile architecture, a hybrid phenomenon. These skate park designs were based off of urban features that skaters had claimed in the streets as valuable to their community. Like take bowls, for example. These are a common skate park feature, but they didn't start out that way. They started out as elements of the city landscape, pools, which skaters then interpreted in a new way. These bowls can be traced back to the first ever kidney bowl in Finland in 1938. This was a kidney-shaped bowl, obviously, with more flowing sides, and we can trace the design evolution through the decades, ending up in California years later, where skaters adopted this design. It's like which came first, the chicken or the egg, but which came first, the skating of the bowls or the addition of the bowls to skate parks? The skating of the bowls. That's what came first. Now, some skaters were content skating at the skate park, others wanted to only skate in the streets, and some did both. Fast forward to now, there's an infinite amount of sub-communities within skating, like vert skating, transition skating, street skating, and more. And there are so many other sports outside of skateboarding that also share the same third place of the skate park. There's skate park users who bike, who blade, who quad skate, who scooter, who WCMX, all of the things. There's a culture connected to these different wheel sports, and that culture varies from sport to sport and from skate park to skate park, but there's a uniting factor through all of them, and that's what I'm focusing on today, is these uniting factors of everybody who uses the park. So let's finally talk about what makes skate parks such a great third place. Skate parks fit the criteria that Oldenburg set aside for what constitutes a third place. There are 8 criteria summed up by scholars that Oldenburg focuses on in his work. I'm going to simplify them to 5 by combining a few that are alike, just for time's sake. So here's 5 reasons why skate parks are a strong third place. Number 1, neutral ground and accessibility. This means that occupants have public access to the space, but no obligation to be there, so they can come and go of their own free will. So to clarify, dragging a kid to church who doesn't necessarily want to go, that wouldn't count as a third space for them. But a teen voluntarily going to youth group or heading to the skate park to burn off some steam, those would be third places for them. Most people go to the skate park because they want to, and that autonomy over how one spends their time brings a sense of stability and control over something, which in a world where we have such little control over so many things is grounding and reassuring. Most skate parks are also free to use, so the barrier of entry is low. Yes, okay, you have to pay for equipment and gear, but the skate community kind of has some ways around this. The community demonstrates a pattern in supporting and encouraging others in beginning their skate journey. There's a theme of wanting to share skating with others. Members typically share resources like passing down an old board or lending someone a pair of wheels to get rolling, and this lowers the barrier of entry just a little bit more. Many places connected to skate parks, like skate shops, also contribute to lowering this barrier. Many skate shops offer tons of support to the community well beyond making a profit. A lot of the skate shop owners are the ones who are instilling this spirit of generosity into the community and into the skate parks. In fact, the Tony Hawk Foundation funded a study called Beyond the Board that showed the following. The fact that skate shop owners cared for skaters and were dedicated to supporting young people beyond skateboarding was meaningful to the skaters and led to reciprocity with skaters willing to help out and give back to the community. There are also lots of people who hang out at the skate park who aren't participating in the sports, so it isn't necessary to have a wheeled instrument to get into the park. People come to hang out, socialize, support their friends who skate, and as long as they're respectful of skate park etiquette, they're usually always welcome. Having access to a space that meets certain needs, like expressing oneself or connecting with others, creates opportunity for communal ties to be formed. When you come to the skate park again and again, you start to form relationships with the other people who are there often. And this leads us to our second criteria for a third place: regulars. Third places are home to a number of regulars, and like the name suggests, these are people who commune regularly. And Oldenburg suggests that these people set the tone and the characteristics of the space. Typically, the more you go to the skate park, the more you get to know the schedules of other people who are skating when you are. For example, at my local skate park and many others, the mornings tend to be for the seasoned skaters. These are people in their 30s to 50s who have been skating for most of their lives, so they have a little bit more of a fun, laid-back attitude. Evenings usually attract more teenagers and young adults, as their schedules tend to lean a little bit more towards having free time at night. And weekends bring a little bit of everyone, from kids to beginners to families, a little bit of everyone filtering through. Seeing other skaters regularly creates a sense of familiarity and community at the park, and this lends itself to making friends because you already have a common interest and you already have shared availability. Especially as adults, making friends becomes increasingly challenging. Due to maintaining jobs, relationships, and families, many adults adults fall into only making friends from their pool of coworkers. By only interacting with the same people over and over again, the trend of limiting connection to the community continues. This further stresses the need for third places to facilitate friendships. And friendships are most easily formed when people feel secure and accepted, which leads us to our next criteria, which is that third places are leveling places. Now, if you're like me, you're like, what the heck does that mean? A leveling or low-profile place is a space where emphasis isn't placed on a person's status in society. This makes way for feelings of commonality and connection between participants. For the most part, the skate park is a place where all people are welcome. Unfortunately, there are always those bad apples who aren't respectful of people at the park, but for the most part, studies show that the skate culture is diverse and tolerant, and will call out things like racism if it occurs. In fact, it was published in an ethnographic study of skateboarding culture that regardless of gender, discipline, ethnicity, or age, the participants in this study routinely embraced each other and supported each other by showing encouragement and appreciation. In another study, an anonymous participant of color is quoted as saying, "It's just crazy how you can collide all these cultures and nobody's really racist about shit. And if they are, you're gonna know real quick, or they're gonna find out that shit doesn't fly around here." I have a theory as to why prejudice, whether it's racism or classism or whatever, exists less at the skate park. I have no idea if this is really why. This is just an idea I have as to why. Something about skate park sports are so humbling. Maybe it's the fact that we're all collectively eating shit learning how to skate. There's this innate connection to the people around you who are experiencing the same thing that you are in a different way. A different skate study participant sums this up well when he says, "The group of us skateboarding, we're all diverse. It doesn't even matter. None of that matters. We just speak the same language of street brothers. It's more of this bond we develop from each other's pain. It's kind of very deep in a way." How beautiful that the language of skate overcomes differences like race or economic background. Money might be able to buy you nice skate stuff, but it can't buy you skill or passion, and skaters learn this quickly. They develop respect for one another based on skill, effort, determination shown during the learning process. Seeing someone else try something and take a fall that you've taken a million times yourself really just makes you feel a sort of bond to them. It makes you root for them to land the trick, even if you don't know them, because you can empathize with that experience. This empathy overshadows other factors like gender, ethnicity, or income, bringing a sort of oneness to the park scene, even with it harboring more individualistic sports. These connections between community members are built on shared experiences, and they grow to create an overall supportive tone of the skate park, which leads us to the third piece of criteria. Yes, hello, Editing Maddie here. My camera died right before I said the piece of criteria, so here I am. The third one is Playful Mood. Okay, back to the video. This standard means that the place has a lighthearted, conversational atmosphere where people feel at ease. Skate parks fit this standard well, as the vibe at the majority of skate parks is a mix between chill and fun, with skaters laughing at their falls, sharing stories in between lines, or making up games to play like Skate, which is a skate version of horse. Most people skate as an outlet, and because of that, the atmosphere at the park is in itself stress relieving. The Beyond the Board study concluded that the two main reasons people skate are to have fun and to relieve stress, so it makes sense that the environment at the skate park would be a lighthearted one. According to Oldenburg, the character of a third place is marked by this playful mood, which contrasts other more serious aspects of life. This means that third places act as a respite of sorts, providing a loose atmosphere away from stressors like work, finances, or home life. People of all ages need this leisure time in order to function at their best in other aspects of their lives. In my personal experience, I show up to the other parts of my life as a better version of myself for having invested in the skate park version of myself. Adults still need time to be creative, play, and connect with one another too. And younger kids deserve the chance to have an actual childhood, not one crammed with social media, school, and extracurriculars. Don't get me wrong, being involved in organized activities can be an integral part of a healthy development. I was very involved in school, sports, music, all kinds of things growing up, and I loved it. But it seems with societal expectations for achievement being so high and rooted in productivity-based capitalistic standards, kids are getting burnt out before they're even teenagers. In 2016, the National Alliance for Youth Sports conducted a survey that concluded around 70% of the youth in the US stop doing organized sports by the time they're 13 because it's just not fun anymore. They claim this pivot away from organized sports is happening at a critical point of development in these teenagers' lives, making it particularly concerning. It's still important for the development of teenagers to incorporate movement into their lives and find community in a way that feels meaningful to them. In fact, one of the reasons skate parks are so different from organized sports is in attitude, according according to an article about the relation of skate parks and adolescent development. Skate parks provide a less pressure-filled environment to explore expression and creativity through movement. It's suggested by Graham Bradley that unlike traditional sports in skating, winning is not the ultimate driving force. Creativity and aesthetics play a large role, making it somewhat of an art form. He goes on to explain that although skate parks are predominantly male spaces, side note, there are still a lot of women, non-binary, and femme-presenting skaters who are doing an amazing job at claiming their space at the skate parks. They're just not the majority demographically speaking. Bradley concluded that although skate parks are male-dominated spaces, the masculinity present there is an alternative masculinity. It emphasizes values of personal freedom, self-expression, and cooperation, rather than more traditional masculine values of aggression, power, and competitiveness. This attitude shift from competition-focused to expression-focused can be refreshing for those who don't really mesh with that aspect of traditional sports. Participating in an activity where the goal isn't to win, but to just have fun, is something we all need in one way or another. I've noticed this commonality of enjoying the fun, chill atmosphere among the skaters that I know too. For myself, the playful mood of the skate park has been a saving grace for my mental health. It's become my place to let go of the weight of the world for just enough to experience childlike joy again, flying around on wheels. And the best part is, I get to experience that freedom with others, and there's nothing comparable to that. My skate friends, and the ones I keep meeting along the way, are genuinely the people I have the most fun with, and my time with them is never wasted. And this brings us to the last requirement of a third place, and that is that it feels like a home away from home. Oldenburg claimed that for somewhere to be considered a third place, occupants must possess similar feelings of warmth, comfort, and belonging as you would in a healthy home setting. In one of the case studies I mentioned earlier, many of the skaters likened their skate friends to their family. The skaters found value in making sure other skaters felt welcome at the park, bringing a sense of approachability to the community. This kinship nurtures each other's sense of belonging, building on each other's intrinsic motivation to become better. This rings true for my experience as well. My wife and I moved to Colorado 3 years ago with no family here, and my skate friends have grown to fill the role of my family both on and off skates. My skate friends have shown up to support me at markets I've vended for my art business. They've shared holidays with me, brought me food when I'm sick, and supported me through some challenging times. They've become the people I know I can call if I need a laugh, advice, or some help in an emergency. And they feel the same about me. I truly value the people in my community because they are incredible human beings who bring so much goodness into the world. I root for them in everything they do, whether that's getting a new job, trying a new trick, setting a new goal. I want them to succeed, and I truly believe in them the way that I know they believe in me too. And this is what family is. This is what community is. And we share a wonderful living room of a skate park. The way being safe in your home makes you feel relieved and comfortable. A regular at a skate park can experience feeling ownership and familiarity at the park. The way a family gathers at a kitchen table to share a meal, skaters gather at the skate park to share an experience. It's this sharing and experiences together that builds a strong foundation for community, for people coming together for common interests and common goals. We need community now more than ever, as the world's third spaces are disappearing in front of our eyes, and we're increasingly replacing in-person connections with online ones. Online relationships are valuable as well, and they have their place. But in-person connection is vital for a healthy development, a healthy social life, and a healthy community. Obviously, I totally vouch for skate parks as a third place, considering I just spent most of this video talking about why they're awesome. But whether it's a skate park or not, I encourage you to find a third place. You deserve the chance to be the happiest, healthiest version of yourself, and that can't happen if you don't have an outlet, a mode of expression, empowering people in your life. Life is so much better when you feel encouraged by those around you, and life is so much better when you just have some damn fun, okay? Fun is a necessary part of life. There are still people who are working hard to provide communities with third places, so do some research and see if there's any in your area that you might be interested in getting involved in. Check in with local businesses that are in your area of interest and inquire about whether they know of any groups or meetups that might be happening. Utilize today's digital resources to plug into a community. Join Facebook groups, check Instagram hashtags like #YourCityEvents and see if anything looks interesting to you. And if nothing's out there, maybe you could consider starting your own third place or community. Regardless, third places need to be kept alive because they keep the community alive through providing space for the public, keep the culture alive by encouraging connections, and keep us alive by giving us an outlet, a support system, and a purpose greater than ourselves. Third places. Third places.